Heaven has no rage like love to hatred turned, nor hell a fury like a woman scorned. These immortal words, penned by William Congreve in his 1697 play The Mourning Bride, echo through the annals of history, a haunting reminder of the storm that can lie dormant within the human heart. Good evening, and welcome to another captivating episode of SkaryTales, where myths and legends come alive under the moonlit sky. My name is Mr. Rook, your guide through these enigmatic hallowed halls, where we illuminate the obscure and whisper life into the forgotten. Tonight, we set aside the world of myth and folklore, and bring to you a tale steeped in blood, vengeance, and transformation, from a time far beyond the age of Congreve's stage, in a land where these words find their truest form. We journey to the 10th century, to the heart of the Kievan Rus kingdom, long before the golden domes of churches rose above the dense untamed forests, when the mighty Dnieper River bore witness to both prosperity and betrayal. It is here, amidst the shadows of medieval Kiev, that one woman's unrelenting vengeance would carve her name into both history and legend. Her name was Princess Olga, and hers is a tale unlike any other, a tale of love turned to ash, of betrayal met with unyielding wrath, and of transformation so profound it would echo through the centuries. So, dear friends, draw near and prepare yourselves, for this is no ordinary story. This is a tale of a widow's fury, a queen's cunning, and a saint's redemption. And it begins, as legends so often do, with betrayal. Welcome, dear friends, to SkaryTales. The Kievan Rus, a realm of vast forests and mighty rivers where Viking seafarers and Slavic tribes forged an unlikely union to create a confederation of princedoms at the crossroads of trade and conquest. Stretching across what we now know as Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, this medieval state thrived under the watchful eye of its capital, Kyiv. This was a land of contrasts, untamed wilderness alongside burgeoning cities, and fierce independence tempered by fragile alliances. The Kievan Rus was not a centralized monarchy, but a collection of semi-autonomous regions ruled by princes, with Kyiv as its heart. In this structure, neither were there any queens, but princesses instead, whose positions were defined by the princely traditions of their time. Their strength lay in their lineage, their role as regents, and their unyielding resolve, qualities that would shape the legacy of the Kievan Rus and its people, bold, resourceful, and often ruthless. Among them was Olga of Pskov, a woman whose lineage tied her to the Varangian adventurers who had once ruled the northern seas. Born between 890 and 925 AD, Olga's early years are cloaked in the mists of history. Yet what we do know is this: she became the wife of Prince Igor I of Kyiv, a union that strengthened the bonds between the Varangian rulers and their Slavic subjects. As consort to Prince Igor, Olga not only stood as a pillar of strength beside her husband, but also nurtured their young son, Sviatoslav, a child whose destiny would shape the future of the Kievan Rus. Theirs was a kingdom of alliances held together by tribute and conquest, with one tribe in particular seeking to test the limits of Kievan authority, the Drevlians. Under the pretense of diplomacy, the Drevlians lured Igor into negotiations, their words honeyed, but their intentions steeped in malice. It was not peace they offered, but punishment. Captured and at their mercy, Igor met an end that remains as infamous as it is gruesome. His captors bound him to 2 bent birch trees, their trunks strained against the pull of their roots. Then, with a wicked finality, the bindings were released. The trees snapped back into place. His body was torn asunder. A grim message to all who would dare to subjugate the Drevlians. Word of Igor's death spread like wildfire, reaching Kyiv with the force of a winter storm. Mourning cloaked the city, its people shattered by the loss of their prince. But the court turned its eyes to Olga, now a widow with a young son too small to wear the crown. Whispers filled the court, their tone uncertain. How would Kyiv survive this affront? And what, they wondered, would the widowed Olga do? Yet none could have anticipated the tempest brewing beneath her veil. For Olga was not merely a woman bereaved, she was a queen unbroken. Beneath her grieving demeanor, a fire had been kindled, a fire fueled by fury, a fury that would soon consume all who had dared to wrong her. Betrayal often begets the audacious, and the Drevlians were no exception. Emboldened by Prince Igor's demise, they dared to suggest the unthinkable, a marriage between their prince, Mal, and the grieving widow, Olga. The Drevlians sent 20 emissaries to Kyiv to negotiate the union. This was no proposal born of love, but a calculated move to secure dominion over the Kievan Rus. When the emissaries arrived at Olga's court, they delivered their message with unabashed arrogance, recounting their treachery and urging her to accept their prince's hand. To their surprise, Olga's response seemed anything but outraged. With a calm, almost serene expression, she replied, "Your proposal is pleasing to me. Indeed, my husband cannot rise again from the dead, but I desire to honor you tomorrow in the presence of my people. Return now to your boat and remain there with an air of arrogance. Tomorrow you shall say, 'We will not ride on horses nor go on foot. Carry us in our boat, and you shall be carried in your boat.'" The next day, the Drevlians stood outside her court, awaiting their promised honor. When summoned, they recited the words Olga had instructed them to speak, and the people of Kyiv rose to fulfill her orders. Hoisting the Drevlian emissaries in their boat as if bearing kings on a palanquin, they carried them triumphantly into the heart of Olga's court. But beneath this spectacle of respect lay something far darker. Unbeknownst to the Drevlians, a trench had been dug the night before, a grim preparation for Olga's revenge. As the people tipped the boat into the trench, the envoys tumbled helplessly into their grave. With chilling composure, Olga herself leaned over the edge, watching as earth was shoveled over their terrified faces. She inquired softly, "Do you find the honor to your taste?" And so the Drevlian emissaries' fate was sealed as the ground swallowed them whole, their muffled cries lost beneath the soil of Kyiv. This, my dear friends, was the princess's opening move, a strike so calculated and brutal that it sent ripples of fear through her enemies. Yet it was only the first note in a symphony of vengeance, each act more ingenious and ruthless than the last. For Olga, you see, was no ordinary widow. She was a woman scorned, and her wrath would echo through history like the tolling of a funeral bell. Fresh from her first act of retribution, Olga was far from satisfied. The burial of the Drevlian envoys was but the opening salvo in a campaign of calculated wrath. With cunning as sharp as any blade, she devised her next move, a performance of deception and fire. Following the grim burial, Olga sent word to the Drevlians, her tone seemingly softened. She expressed her acceptance of their audacious proposal, requesting a new envoy of their noblest men to finalize the marriage arrangements. The Drevlians, ignorant of the fate that had befallen their earlier envoys, were emboldened by what they perceived as her compliance. They dispatched their finest delegation to Kyiv, believing they would return with a queen. When the envoys arrived, they were met with warmth and hospitality, or so it seemed. Princess Olga, veiling her malice behind a mask of regal decorum, extended a lavish welcome. "You have travelled far," she said. "Surely such esteemed guests should refresh themselves before we proceed." She directed them to a grand bathhouse, its interior warm with rising steam, the scent of fragrant oils masking the tension that hung in the air. As the Drevlian nobles stepped inside, their arrogance gave way to indulgence. The bathhouse, they believed, was a mark of Olga's submission, a sign of their growing dominance. But appearances can be deceiving. Once the nobles had entered and commenced enjoying themselves, the doors were secured from the outside as Olga's men set the bathhouse ablaze. Flames licked at the wooden walls, engulfing the structure in an inferno. The envoys' once triumphant songs turned to screams, their fate sealed by their own hubris. The bathhouse stood for only moments longer, a pyre of the princess's design, before collapsing into ash and silence. The remaining Drevlians, far from Kyiv, remained blissfully unaware of their delegate's fiery demise. Yet Olga was merely at the precipice of her vengeance, her wrath unquenched, her next act already forming in the shadows. Vengeance is a sharp blade, and Princess Olga wielded it with unparalleled cunning. After the burial of envoys and the inferno of the bathhouse, she turned her sights to the heart of the Drevlian people. A message was sent to their leaders. "Prepare great quantities of mead in the city where you killed my husband, that I may weep over his grave and hold a funeral feast for him." It was a request steeped in tradition and honor, or so it seemed. The Drevlians, still blinded by their ambition, complied without hesitation. A feast was arranged at Igor's tomb, with the grieving widow and her small retinue as honored guests. When Olga arrived, she did indeed shed tears for her fallen husband, her lamentations carrying through the gathering. The Drevlians, believing they had finally won her favor, joined the mournful feast, their cups filled to the brim with mead. As the night deepened, the Drevlians indulged in drink, toasting the memory of the man they had betrayed and slain. Cup after cup their wits dulled, and the solemn air gave way to revelry. When the time was right, Olga's mourning veil was cast aside, revealing the steel beneath her sorrow. At the height of their drunken revelry, Olga struck. With a single fateful command, her attendants sprang into action, weapons flashing in the dim torchlight. The feast became a bloodbath, the mead-stained tables a battleground. Olga herself moved through the chaos, urging her followers onward with steely resolve, ensuring no Drevlian escaped their reckoning. By the time the sun rose, the fields around Igor's tomb were silent, littered with the remains of those who had dared to cross the Kievan ruler. 5,000 Drevlians were said to have fallen that night, a devastating blow to a people who had underestimated the depths of Olga's vengeance. And yet her wrath was not yet sated. Leaving the devastation behind, Olga returned to Kyiv with renewed purpose. She began assembling her army, determined to deliver the final, crushing blow to the Drevlian nation. This night of carnage was but one movement in the symphony of her retribution. The culmination of Olga's vengeance was as cunning as it was devastating. After returning to Kyiv, the princess, now a seasoned tactician in the art of retribution, raised an army and laid siege to Iskorostan, the Drevlian stronghold. For over a year, Olga's forces surrounded the city, cutting off its supplies and wearing down its defenders. The Drevlians, though weakened and desperate, fortified their walls, bracing for what they assumed would be a final, brutal assault. But Olga had no intention of relying on brute force alone. As the siege dragged on, Olga sent a curious message to the Drevlians. "I no longer seek to destroy you or your people. You have suffered enough for the death of my husband. Instead, I ask only a simple tribute: 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each household within your walls." The Drevlians, puzzled by her request yet relieved at the prospect of peace, quickly complied. After all, what harm could come from a few birds? Little did they realize, however, this seemingly merciful demand was the key to their undoing. As night fell, Olga's soldiers prepared for the true nature of her plan. To each bird they fastened a small rag soaked in sulfur. When the preparations were complete, the birds were released, flying back to their roosts within the homes, barns, and towers of Iskorostan. And then, as the rags ignited, the city was transformed into an inferno. Flames spread rapidly, leaping from one building to the next, carried by the very creatures the Drevlians had offered in tribute. The air was filled with the crackling of fire, the screams of panic, and the ominous glow of the blaze lighting the night sky. Olga's forces waiting outside the city watched as Iskorostan burned. Those who fled the flames were met by her soldiers, ensuring no resistance remained. By dawn, the once proud Drevlian stronghold was reduced to ashes, a smouldering graveyard of a tribe whose defiance had sealed its fate. In the annals of history, the Drevlians soon faded into obscurity, their name remembered only through the unyielding vengeance of Olga, the Princess of Kyiv. The tale of Olga does not end in the smoke and ruin of Iskorostan. No, the fire of her vengeance gave way to a quieter yet equally formidable chapter, one where the widow who avenged her husband became the ruler who shaped a nation. Yet Olga's story, like her spirit, was far from conventional. When she journeyed to Constantinople, her reputation had preceded her. Emperor Constantine VII, enchanted by her wit and presence, sought to bind their nations and their lives together through marriage. But Olga, ever the strategist, had no desire for such a union. Instead, she converted to Christianity under the emperor's auspices, a move as spiritual as it was political. By accepting baptism and naming Constantine her godfather, she elevated her status while elegantly sidestepping his proposal. It was a masterstroke of diplomacy, a clever evasion wrapped in divine grace. Olga's conversion marked the beginning of a profound transformation, not just for herself, but for the Kievan Rus. As the first ruler of her land to adopt Christianity, she planted the seeds of faith that would flourish under her grandson, Vladimir the Great. Her canonization as a saint is a testament to her enduring impact, her vengeful past tempered by the light of her faith. Today, Saint Olga is venerated as the patron saint of widows and converts, her story serving as a beacon of resilience and transformation for those who seek redemption and strength in the face of adversity. Olga's legacy is one of contrasts. She is both the scourge of the Drevlians and the saint of Kyiv. Her life reminds us that within one soul can exist the duality of destruction and redemption, wrath and wisdom. She was a beacon, a force of nature who shaped her destiny and that of her people with unmatched resolve. And so, my dear friends, as we draw the curtain on this extraordinary tale, let us linger for a moment on the power of transformation. In Olga's life, we find the tempest of wrath reshaped by the grace of faith, a testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit to rise from the ashes of vengeance and despair. Her story is a reminder that even the darkest of storms can birth a radiant dawn, and that within the crucible of suffering lies the alchemy of redemption. My dear friends, our tale for this evening has concluded, but our journey does not end here. Visit us again soon. Here in our little corner of the ether, we shall unravel another tale. A story imbued with fear, superstition, and perhaps the occasional sprinkle of fairy dust. We hope you enjoyed tonight's story. Join us again as we delve into the pages of history, folklore, and some things that make us wonder, and perhaps others that make us shudder. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to SkaryTales. We're a small channel, but with your help, we'll continue to grow. Together, we'll explore the shadows and the light of the world's most enchanting and terrifying tales. Until next time, remember that every tale hides a truth, and every truth hides a tale. Sleep well, and good night.